Well, I guess that orientation was locked. Hold on, we're live, but where's your lock button? Lock, unlock. Okay, I guess we have to do it this way.
Do you want me to help you with it?
No, we're good.
Okay.
We're live.
Hey friends, we're at the garage tonight because next week I get to go on what I'm calling a week-long Steelhead soiree with some friends. I'm really excited, but I'm going through some of my gear and thought that I'd show you some of the things that I look for when I'm setting up my gear for a Steelhead season. So some of my Steelhead stuff hasn't really been touched since last Steelhead season or even the Steelhead season before. So I picked up one of the rods that I absolutely love to use. This is one of my Fenwick rods and one of my Abu Garcia reels. And just looking at it, like this is how much line was on it. And now that I see this, I remember it because, you know, towards the end of the last year, I think I got like snagged up on some things, lost some line. A few things happened. And I remember you thinking I need to respool this the next time I go out. So when it's not filled up kind of to like this rounded edge here, this is definitely low, like definitely low. I also have some new line, and that's this spider wire, this kind of ultra line. Is a really, really slick line. I have this in 50 pound, and I think I also have it in 40 pounds somewhere too. But I was going to throw some of that on here. The diameter really isn't that different between the 40 and the 50 pounds, so I'm probably just going to go with the 50 pound because I intend on using this as a bobber float rod. This is my 9-foot HMX rod by Fenwick. Absolutely love it. So some good tough line is great. So first I'm just going to strip all of this line off. Switching out and having fresh line for the season is always fantastic. And with braid, you know, if you have a lot of line loaded on your reel and you have a bigger spinning reel with a little bit of capacity to hold a lot of line, you can kind of just strip off the first, you know, handful, you know, the first so many yards, and the, you know, braid's pretty new. But with this one, this is pretty used all the way through. And like, look, like deeper down in, there's like a backlash from way back in there. Like it's almost like, you know, how rings on a tree kind of show its like life and history. It's kind of like the same thing with a reel. Like, oh, a couple, you know, 60 yards ago, there was a backlash that never got dealt with or whatever. So, I mean, I've used this reel. Tons of people have grabbed this reel and used it. Oh, there it is. And I don't know if, I hope you saw that. That loop that was kind of tangled up in the line. A lot of times with braid, people worry about trying to pick them free. I would say like 75% of the time you could pull it straight and it pops right out. And that was the case with that little loop that was caught up in this reel.
Be careful about not cutting your fingers though.
Yeah, that's true. Careful about not cutting your fingers. So I tend to like do this kind of like wrap around my fingers with braid and pop it, but I kind of know how hard I can pull before I'm going to start like cutting into my finger. And you can't really see it right now, but there's just like scars upon scars, and like this whole side of my finger is way rougher than like, you know, here or here because of years and years and years and years of pulling on line and having wet hands. Being up in the rainforest, you're constantly soaked, and then you're pulling on line, and line cuts and all of that was definitely a big part of my life.
So, Get On Out There says, what leader do you like to use?
So it depends on what I'm doing. So I usually set up a handful of leaders, and the things that I'm taking into account when I'm picking those leaders is what kind of fish am I using, or fish am I fishing for? So is it, you know, Chinook? Is it coho? Is it steelhead? Like, what is the fish? And then within that, like, for example, steelheading on the upper Olympic Peninsula, those fish can get pretty big. They're known for being really, really big fish. So if I'm, you know, fishing on a fish that's average 15 pounds, I'm going to use a little bit of a stronger leader than if you're fishing a system where your steelhead average 4 to 8 pounds or, you know, 5 to 10 pounds or something like that. So with, you know, some smaller steelheads, some of those cookie cutter hatchery brats that are all like, you know, exactly 5.7 pounds or something like that, you know, I think a good 8-10 pound sort of leader is fine for that. But, you know, you might end up using something a little bit heavier if you have really dirty water conditions. And all up and down the coast right now on the West Coast, everyone's dealing with dirty water conditions, whether it's from you know, a big washout, whether it's from, you know, storms, you know, all of the above. You know, weather's getting a little bit cooler, so rivers will start clearing up, but with all this rain that we've had, it's going to be a minute before that happens. So I can safely kind of go a little bit bigger. Now, the area that I'm going to be fishing, I think there's going to be some good sized steelhead, and the water is going to be really dirty. So I'm planning on using 12 or 15 pound leaders because I know I'm going to be able to get away with it. Water's dirty enough to where fish aren't going to be able to see the line as easily. But I also am going to have some like 12 pound, 10 pound kind of stuff leaders with me with some setups and things tied up, because let's say, you know, I'm out there a few days, stops raining, forecast changes, snow level drops, which makes a difference too. It gets really, really cold and the rivers clear up, and now all of a sudden you're fishing a little river that's crystal clear. Now you need some, potentially, you could have some line shy fish, and you might want to size down on your leader a little bit because you're using a big old nasty dirty water leader, and you could tip your fish off using too big of a leader in a space. Sometimes it doesn't matter. I mean, plenty of times it doesn't matter as much, but there are times where it really does. So I don't like to get stuck, you know, only having one option with me. I'll bring a couple options with me, and that's actually a good thing to keep in mind for, you know, even like, let's say you're using roe to fish with steelhead. Don't just bring one flavor out with you. Bring, you know, a natural egg cure. Bring a red, bring a pink, you know, bring some things with different additives and things like that. Give yourself some options because your conditions are always going to change. Things are going to be, you know, you're going to get there and it's different than you realized. All of that. So I say, you know, give yourself options.
Have you ever fished the Au Sable?
What?
The Au Sable, AUSABLE.
No, I haven't.
Hey,
Quite frankly, I've never heard of it.
had a great spring there last year.
Oh, that's great.
Two River CS is, are you back in Oregon or Washington, or are you fishing Northern Cali?
I'm going to be everywhere from Northern California to about like Southern Oregon, I would say. Like probably,
Like Central.
yeah, like Central, so like I guess Reedsport all the way to like NorCal area. So I'm going to be, my soiree will be all over well, the Oregon coast and the California coast. And I'm not too hard pressed on where I'm going. You know, I just want to fish with friends. I want to explore some rivers that I haven't explored. My plan was to go back up to the peninsula where I've fished every single steelheading season since I was 13 years old. Yeah, but there's a lot of closures and a lot of pressure, and you know what? Why not try something different? So I'm gonna do that.
Yeah, and then once we get back, we're going to hit up some Cali rivers too.
We are.
Been invited on the American, the Trinity, and try maybe is the Smith in
I think, yeah,
California?
Smith,
Feather.
the Feather River.
Yeah, the Feather.
Feather.
Those are all river names.
Those are river names.
In Southern Oregon, there's lots of rivers too.
Yeah. I'm gonna go to those too. I hope I can visit as many as possible.
Got a great book that the Au Sable is in Michigan, Huron side. Gotcha.
Oh, okay. I was like, yeah, I don't think I've heard of that one. That's why.
Never. That's more like my home turf. Although I've never really been there either.
I caught my first steelhead in the Midwest this year.
You did? I did too.
You did too.
Yeah, that was my first.
With the Fish and Magician.
Yep, out of
Algoma.
There you go. I forgot.
Yeah.
So, all right, let's look at the reel. Where are we at?
This is where we're at. This is my Revo rocket, the Revo SX rocket. It has been a fantastic reel. I have used the heck out of it. I have beat it. I have beat it and beat it and beat it. And it's still amazing.
2 seasons or so on that? Yeah.
I guess it couldn't be more than 2 seasons. It's like 2.5 seasons. Because I think I use this for a lot of trout expeditions as well. Anyways.
Oh.
I digress. Where it is line. Alright. So here's my process with this part. Now, if you were to go to YouTube right now and type in how to add braid to your bait casting reel, you're going to get about 100,000 results, and all of them are going to be like variations. Like they're going to be something a little bit different. Some people swear you have to do it this way, that way. For me, I do it the way that I was taught, and it hasn't failed me. There might be better ways to do it now. This works for me, so I'm just going to keep with it. I think there's something to be said for routine and consistency in your steelheading game and your fishing game. So I'm going to go with that theory and do things kind of the same. So for me, I attach this to my reel, and I try to take advantage of my little loop-de-loos here if I can. It doesn't always work out. Ha, got it. Just another way to like kind of anchor that line in there. Because the deal with braided line is it is hard to tie onto these because there is so much slippage. So my plan is to tie it to the reel here. I take a little bit of electrical tape and I put a slice of tape over it. And the reason why I do that is because when I start to wind line onto the reel, the braid cinches down into the electrical tape. It kind of like beds down in it, and I can pull it tight, and that's going to keep anything from slipping. So I have my line kind of put through some of these rungs in the actual like spool itself. I'll have a little bit of electrical tape to help that line kind of stack the way that I want it to. And I can rest assured knowing that there will be no slippage, there will be nothing pulling loose or pulling out, and I can fight fish to my heart's content. So that's kind of my plan here. So, there we go. And actually before I do that, I'm gonna stop myself before I do what I do almost every single time. I'm sure, I wonder if someone's caught it, what I was starting to do. I didn't run it through the eyes before I started. I do that almost every single time.
Says, I'm getting good use out of my Black Max. Super impressed with it for the money spin cast. What's the Black Max? Or who makes that?
Not sure.
Someone says, don't forget fluorocarbon lines also.
Yeah. A lot of people they'll like back their braid with mono or fluorocarbon or something. I think a lot of people use mono as a trick too, if that's what you're referring to. And if you're referring to, you know, clear water, low water, that sort of thing. Then fluoro is a great option for low water situations because it's harder to see. It is almost impossible to see once
Yeah, but it makes a Black Max. Oh, cool.
Oh,
I'll have to look at that.
I wonder if they're talking about another reel that I'm not going to worry about it. There are too many things happening right now. All right, get this baby going.
Victoria Holmes says, I can't use a baitcaster to save my life.
Yeah, I get that a lot. I got a lot of people messaging me and say that like they're really struggling with using a baitcaster. And my advice for that is get yourself a baitcaster, of course, or have someone that's willing to let you borrow their baitcaster. And then just make yourself use it for an entire day. You're gonna backlash, just accept the fact that you're going to backlash a lot, you're gonna be frustrated, and just stick with it for an entire day. And the reason why I think that you should borrow somebody's that is already comfortable with their baitcaster is what a lot of people do is they say, I want to start using a baitcaster. And then they go to their local sports shop, their outdoor sports shop, and they buy something like fairly cheap, which is totally fine. But sometimes the cheaper baitcasters tend to be a little bit harder to use. So they buy one that's kind of cheap. It's a little bit harder to modify or adjust or use. And then they start, feeling frustrated because, they're not comfortable using a baitcaster, and the baitcaster isn't really set up for whatever type of fishing that they're doing. And so they're just kind of frustrated the whole time. So if you borrow someone's that's already dialed in, and you know that it's nothing wrong with the reel, because like that's the piece that we wonder about, right? Is like, is it the reel or is it me? It sometimes really is the reel when you're starting out. And so get someone else's that's already set up, just use it for a whole day. Just let yourself like mess up the whole day. It's exactly what I did. I just messed up for a whole day and then finally got with it. Okay, so
couple questions before we go.
Sure.
He says, have you fished with oar angling in Oregon? Yes.
Yes, of course I have. With Mr. Kyle and Miles, and they just have a baby. And they're so awesome. I fished off of his dory. We fished for rockfish and had a killer time.
So a couple people are suggesting some other reels that are, great reels, but one of the other things I would say, especially
Yeah.
with a reel like this, if I
Yeah.
can interject, is learn the brakes on them.
Right.
Like the adjustments here
Yep.
to tighten the reel.
Yep.
And then tighten the spool. There's a couple different ways to adjust it.
Yep.
And once you get it, crank those down at first because those will stop you from having a backlash.
Yes.
And once you kind of figure out how to cast it, and you're not going to cast far at all, and then as you go, start backing those off until you figure it out. Because you'll get to a spot where you're casting really far, and you'll start to, the reel will kind of find that sweet spot of having the amount of brake and pressure on it versus free spool to let whatever weight you're casting. And it matters how heavy whatever you're casting is
And
too.
that's the thing, is like, it really does matter. So, I mean, some people go out and they'll throw on, like, let's say they're, throwing spinners or something like that, and they're like, okay, my reel works really well for that. And then they switch it and they do a little bit of like float fishing, and they're using light floats, light gear, and all of a sudden you're like, it's backlashing like crazy. It probably just needs to be adjusted. And light gear makes a really big difference, switching from something heavy to light. That's why I say use something that's already set up from someone else, using gear that they're already throwing with it, and that can be really helpful.
No, Victoria, tighten it down so that it's tighter first. She said, so make everything loose first. No, make it tight first.
Yep, make it tight first.
So that it's the brake pressure is there, so that the spool doesn't spin free.
Yeah.
And that's how you get the backlash.
Yeah, and that's why it's going to be kind of tight. You're going to cast, and things aren't going to go as far as you want. But then you'll really start getting the feel, and you'll be like, okay, I need a little bit of distance. I'm going to back this off a little bit, this piece off a little bit, and then now I cast, and I have the spool is spinning faster, and I'm casting a further distance, but I kind of understand how to control it a little bit more. So you'll kind of go through like that learning curve. So start with things a little bit tighter than you would think, and you're going to cast, things are going to go far, and then just continuously back it off. Go like a couple clicks at a time and find what's right for you. Another rule of thumb, once you're kind of more comfortable with it, is if you have a lure on your baitcaster, let's say you have like a little spinner right here, if you just kind of like click and open this, the lure should fall down at like a slow pace, but it shouldn't drop like a rock, like when you open a spinning reel, like your lure, whatever, drops like a rock. But when you open a baitcaster, it should slowly kind of hit the ground. Now, if it kind of goes slow and then just kind of stops, you're a little bit too tight. And if it again drops like a rock, you're a little bit too loose. So that's kind of another way to gauge whether you're in the right, if you're in the zone, if I may. So that's kind of how I set that up. So I'm gonna finish spooling this baby. Matt's gonna help me because I want him to hold this because I want a lot of tension.
Just give me the screwdriver.
Okay, yeah, you can just talk. They know that you're there. There's no illusion.
I don't want to like interrupt you.
It's okay.
And here's a question that I have.
Okay.
Does it matter?
Sorry, let me finish this part.
Okay.
So the reason why he's holding that and creating tension, so when I reel it, I want the braid to stack very, very tightly at first. That is going to help me with my casting. I'm not going to deal with backlashes. It's going to stack up the appropriate way that it needs to. It's going to save you all sorts of issues by winding it tightly at first. So, okay, go, Matt.
Do you want the line coming off the top or off the bottom or off the side, or does it matter?
I mean, I think off the top is fine. It really doesn't matter too much to me. The thing is you don't want it like rubbing hard on anything or rubbing on anything rigid. I just kind of want it to I want it to be taut, and I want it to stack up just the way that I want. Yeah, just like that. That's great. Any more questions?
So Get On Out There says, funny story, I actually got Kyle into fishing and now he's living my dream life.
Oh my goodness!
So he's from Michigan.
So I should be thanking you
Yeah.
for the trip that I went on.
So get on out there. Are you the guy that taught him to walleye fish off his pier? As he told us that story after our fishing trip.
That's right.
And BBBYPSI says, I have a great recipe for you with steelhead rainbow trout called smoked steelhead white chili. That sounds delicious.
That sounds good. Please send that my way. Send that to me on social media or somewhere. I would love, love, love to try. I've not done anything like that before. And I'm due for another food video. I've been doing a lot of like, other sorts of things like gear and like trips and stuff like that, but I haven't done like a good recipe video in a while. I'm due. Send me that. I need ideas. Okay, so I've wound a lot of this up. And I can see, do you remember at the beginning of this, you could see a lot of like black gap of the spool between like the red lining of it, and that's slowly disappearing. So I'm gonna bring this line all the way up to the bottom edge of that red. I don't wanna see any black spool, but I don't wanna overfill it either. So I'm pretty close. I'm just gonna go a little bit more.
Victoria says, are you using your thumb as, are you using your thumb as you reel or as you cast or both? As definitely as you cast, Victoria. So you definitely want to have your thumb on the reel to kind of act as a brake. And the way that I learned was on an old school spinning or casting reel that didn't have a brake on it. So your thumb was like...
Your thumb was the brake.
Yeah, I definitely learned the hard way. But yeah.
So that is all the way up to where I want it. Yay. And now I'm going to use some shears. I get these like are little Berkeley shears, and they have like a little notch on them, and they cut braid. These are like the best all around shears for me. Not perfect for saltwater, but like for sitting on your bench at home. Amazing. And then that's it. Another rod done. Fresh line on there. It's a little on the full side. I'll pull a little bit of it off. But
Do you want to talk about the quiver and or the arsenal and what you got?
yeah, I can walk through it really quickly. I'm still kind of in the middle of putting it together.
Yeah.
So you just saw this rod. I think this is my 9-foot rod, 8 to 15, 9 foot, 8 to 15 pound rod. So this is going to be the float baby. And 9 foot is just such a sweet spot. So I'm taking a 10.5-foot rod with me, and I'm also taking some 8.5-foot rods with me. But those are going to be, the shorter ones are going to be to pitch like spinners and spoons and things like that. This 9-foot and the 10.5-foot are great float rods. And I like that extra length because you can manage line. You can really get the line off the water, manage it a little bit easier. But 9 foot, if there's a lot of trees and things, it's not so long like that 10.5-footer to where I'm like kind of stuck in, I can't really like cast or anything like that. It's that sweet spot. And I always bring the 10.5-foot, especially to new places, because if I do need a spot that I need to like hook out to, I'm kind of prepared for a little bit of everything. So this rod I have set up, I'm excited about it. This is something I'm putting away, something that I'm putting away. Now this one I'm bringing out for pitching some spinners, and I think I'm going to change out the braid on this one as well, just so I'm starting everything fresh. But this is the 8.5, 10 to 20 pound rod. Now this is going to be my spinner baby. This is going to be the spoon baby. She needs a little cleaning, a little bit of love. I have another Revo X on this one. And I have this one, I forget what the gear ratio on it, but it's a little bit slower than some of the other bait casting reels.
I was going to say the Rocket is the fast one.
The reason why I use one that's a little bit slower is because when I'm bringing in spinners, I don't need a ton of speed to be ripping it out of the water. No, I want to kind of like slowly, methodically bring it in. So a reel that has a lower gear ratio kind of helps me do that. But with a higher gear ratio, if I need to like get my bobber out of the way, I'm in the tail out, I need to get out of there, or I have a fish on, or a fish, a bobber takedown, and I want to like reel my line up and set the hook, like I could do all of that and react really quickly. So I have both. And then this is the 8.5-foot float rod, and then this is the 10.5-foot float rod. So again, some options and that sort of thing. I'm going to take some of the tackle off of them and change that out, and I'm probably going to have a few of them set up for bobber dogging, and then a few of them set up with these torpedo floats. Now, bob or dogging, you're going to have your presentation on the bottom of the river, close to the bottom of the river. And then with the torpedo floats, you have kind of a chandelier, more vertical presentation. So sometimes one works more so than the other. Like you don't bob or dog jigs because you need jigs to kind of like stand up and do their pretty little fluffy thing through riffles and stuff like that. But with something like, you know, big yarnies and row, you know, you kind of do want that to be closer to the bottom. And so I use both of those, so I have some options there. And that way I can kind of switch out my leaders underneath my bobbers and set up anything that I need to set up. So that's some of the arsenal that I'm putting together right now. The next thing that I'm going to do once I kind of have my starting lineup, if you will, ready, is I'm going to go through my worms, I'm going to go through my beads, I'm going to go through my plugs, I'm going to go through my spinners and my spoons and just see like what I need for everything. Yeah, so here's some of the things. There's not really much to see. So I'm going to go through all of those things, see what I have, see what I might need, and then make a little visit to a local shop and talk to some nice folks and kind of finish up buying and filling in the holes of all of the things that I want to have coming out to the river. So I will show you more of that as the process is more complete. And as you probably may have guessed, we are going to film some of these excursions. So I can't wait to show you what those adventures are like. And beyond that, I can't wait to show you what these beautiful places are like that are just like right here and accessible for all of us. These are all going to be public places that I go to, and I can't wait to show them all to you. So stay tuned for that, and happy fishing, and hey, Merry Christmas. Have a wonderful holiday, and we'll see you shortly. Bye-bye.